Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you, friends, for joining us from all over the world, from wherever you may be, for the celebration of the results of our journalist training program, Changing the Narrative. I'm Erin Green, and I had the honor of being the project coordinator for this iteration of the WACC program on refugees and migrants, and I also have the joy to be your host for today. So before we begin with our program, I would like to cover a few technical matters for you. First, there is interpretation into French and Arabic available for you. If you wish to use either of those channels, please click the globe at the bottom of your screen and select the channel that you would like to listen to. While we're thinking about the interpreters, I'd also remind everyone who is speaking today to speak as slowly and clearly as possible to make the work of our interpreters easy and clear for all of those who are listening in. So I would also like to remind people that there is a chat function, a Q&A function available, and you are welcome to use those to put responses and questions as we go along throughout the program. We will have a dedicated moment for conversation with our audience and with the participants today. So please feel free to either write notes down for yourself as you go along or to put them directly into the chat. And we hope to make this as interactive as possible. So our program today is quite full, and I hope you will find it equally enriching. So we will have some words of welcome from the WACC Global leadership in a moment. We will introduce you to the project so that you understand exactly who these people are and what they're talking about. And I hope that you will find the video interesting and also inspiring. We will have presentations from each of the regional associations participating in the project. We will have one student from Africa, one from Middle East, and one from Europe presenting their projects. Then we will take a moment for some responses. The responses will come from a variety of perspectives. They will offer some feedback, some insight from the perspective of conflict journalism, from migration policy, from communications, from the global migration perspective on what we have heard from the students. We will take a brief break at that moment to regroup, to gather our thoughts, to grab a coffee or tea if you like, and then we will return for some time of conversation, for listening, for illumination, and then the celebration. We will have a little celebration for our students who have given so much to this program, who have brought it to life, and who have really surprised us wonderfully with their competency, with their dedication, their creativity, and it really shone through in their final projects. So thank you for joining us today. So I'm very delighted to turn the floor over now to Philip Lee, the WACC Global General Secretary. And he will speak just briefly about the significance of this Changing the Narrative program for the WACC Global movement, and about some of the ways that we can continue this work beyond our time together today. So Philip joined WACC in 1975 and is currently General Secretary. He's the editor of the journal Media Development and is responsible for a number of publications as author, editor, and co-editor. In 2013, he was conferred an honorary Doctor of Divinity by the Academy of Ecumenical Indian Theology and Church Administration in Chennai, India. We welcome Philip to speak in English, French, and possibly Spanish if he likes. And so now I turn the floor over to Philip.
Thank you, Erin, and welcome everybody. Why is changing the narrative important? Well, firstly, it's an issue of communication rights. All those rights that allow people to express their identities and needs, freedom of expression and opinion, the right to information, language rights, etc. Denying these rights is a form of silencing or censorship. In terms of the news media, such denial can only be tackled by better codes of practice, ethical and accurate reporting, more balanced and nuanced representations. And today, with social media often carrying fake news, efforts are also needed to combat overt discrimination and hate speech. News media are important, but there is also a broader context with which WACC is also concerned. We need fairer representation in film, on television, and in popular media. Why? Well, studies show that audiences substitute stereotypes they see on screen for reality, especially when they have not had direct interaction with other ethnic groups. Media clearly have the power to shape attitudes and behavior. More authentic representations can help break down barriers, open minds to new ideas, and even be a source of inspiration. And I'll give you just one example. In 2001, Jack Shaheen published his book, Real Bad Arabs: How Hollywood Vilifies a People. Based on a study of more than 900 films, it revealed how the distorted lenses of movie makers depicted Arabs as heartless, brutal, uncivilized, religious fanatics, stereotyping them like the worst propaganda. And Shaheen's watchword was the Arab proverb, by repetition, even the donkey learns. So in short, how people are represented in the media, in this case film, by degrees affects the perceptions and behavior of other people. And of course, this effect can be positive or negative. Now, WACC has studied the representation of women in the world's news media in its long-running Global Media Monitoring Project, GMMP. It does so because it believes that what we see, hear, and read about women affects individual and collective attitudes and actions. Patriarchal thinking, misogyny, and bias can, in part, be challenged and changed by changing the narrative. And that same logic can be applied to media representations of migrants, refugees, and internally displaced peoples. Changing that narrative is crucial to understanding the real world we live in and to restoring the communication rights of people everywhere. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Philip, for giving us that bit of context and for the global overview about this project. So before we head into the student discussions, we thought it was important that our audience understood what changing the narrative was all about. So rather than tell you, we thought it best that we show you. So I will ask Walter to kindly play the program introduction video.
I walked across Mexico a while back with a big migrant caravan, and there was about 15,000 people set off from Honduras walking up to the US, and it got an enormous amount of coverage. And a journalist friend of mine from South Sudan wrote to me while I was doing that, and she said, "How many people on the caravan?" And I said, "Oh, about 15,000. And she said, "Oh, well, not many then." And in South Sudan, of course, they've seen absolutely massive movements of hundreds of thousands of people in one go that haven't got any attention.
approach communicating our message from this perspective, from a tribal perspective, we connect with a social context. So there's a specific issue and we dive into that so we connect people and our messaging with people's interest and their values. That's how we connect with them rather than things to describe them. So it's more of what's internal, and that's what connects people. And that's how we should approach podcasting as well.
After completing our online training sessions, the journalists went off on their own to carry out their projects. They proposed a wonderful diversity of podcasts, of radio documentaries, of photojournalism, first-person narratives, traditional research projects, and monitoring how they can make an impact beyond their own organization.
When asked what was the one thing she wanted listeners to know about asylum seekers and refugees, she had the following to say.
Asylum seekers and refugees are human beings with feelings, with experiences, mostly trauma. Nobody just wants to pack up and leave their home, go somewhere else, and be discriminated and mistreated, possibly killed. Nobody just does that. Wherever you go in the world, there you are. There you are with your trauma. There you are with your fears. There you are with everything you've lost. And there you are with everything you have to gain. I would love for us to just be able to be given the opportunity to gain, because we've lost so much.
So I hope now you have a broader picture of what we have been trying to do over the last few months and a greater curiosity. So I'm so excited for this moment. We have 3 students with us today who participated fully and with everything they had in this program. And they came up with really interesting and contrasting projects. They represent each of the 3 geographic regions that collaborated in this project. The first being from the Middle East, the second coming from Europe, and third, we will hear from a colleague representing the Africa geographic region. So I will introduce the speakers as they are about to speak, and then we will turn it over to each of them for about a 10-minute presentation where they will speak briefly about why they wanted to participate, the impact they've seen, and most importantly, about the project that they will be presenting to you. So the first speaker, whom I'm delighted to introduce and delighted to have the chance to hear more from, is Aname Nangonan. Aname has both French and Beninese citizenship. After her master's in religion and societies, she specialized in modern Arabic in television and print media. Over the last few years, she has been engaged with the organization Anti-Racism Movement as community advocacy coordinator. She is working in direct contact with migrant domestic workers for advocacy campaigns, media campaigns, to give more visibility to the migrant community's fieldwork and women initiatives. And we could not ask for a more fitting candidate for our program, and her podcast project certainly shows the results of this. So Aname, I will turn it over to you.
So the first question, why I decided I wanted to participate in changing narrative. I think the context of migrant domestic workers in Lebanon. So we have a migrant community center in Lebanon with the anti-racism movement. And the part is really to develop and support migrant domestic workers, women-led initiative for them to have a safe space. And most of the time we have a media workshop where we're trying to develop podcast, Photoshop, documentary, and photography for them to have more capacity and get the resources that they need to tell more about their stories, their experiences as migrant domestic workers. So this part for me was really to get more visibility for women migrant domestic workers in the narrative, in the media narrative. And something I wanted to add also, if you know more about Lebanon, you know about the economic crisis, everything that happened, the Beirut blast, and also the COVID crisis. So most of the time we'll say that crisis always makes the situation worse for migrant domestic workers, for migrants in general, for refugees in general. So every time the situation gets worse and migrant domestic workers in Lebanon pay the price. So for me, it was really important to have this both-sided stories of sharing experiences to kind of offset the mainstream discourse on migration. For example, in Lebanon, we often say that migrant domestic workers are getting all the dollars in the countries, or stealing the jobs of Lebanese workers, etc. So it was really to have this both-sided story. And another thing was in the training also to have this opportunity to confront experiences and perspectives on migration for with other journalists who are working also in this training. For example, I will tell more later on, but we had also two partnership with Seble from Ethiopia and Teresa from Italy. So it was really important to have, through this participant, have partnership and to know more on how migration can be discussed in different countries. The other thing was the impact that I saw in this work was that I really wanted to have women and migrant domestic workers as a part of the reflection process and the production process, because the podcast was made for the women also to have the space to express, because we know that most of the time they don't have the space, that women are really put aside, and especially women in migration, I put aside, they be put aside in this topic. So we had really preparation meetings before, which was the most important. So 3 main meetings where we reflect together, and they try to explain why they decided to have this topic. We're tackling topics most important for women and for their communities, which are a topic that most of the time are not requested by random media request. So this podcast was also to have the goal of awareness process, which we have with women. It's like they're discuss this between themselves, between their communities, and for migrant domestic workers. They were giving advices on, for example, if you want to return home, how to get ready for that. If we're talking about racism and discrimination in Lebanon, also how can you cope with your mental health because of racism, because of daily discrimination. So it was really in terms of like serving also the community, and especially migrant workers in home countries. And another thing was really to have this image and to give more power to women and to migrant domestic workers, to kind of cut with the image of women being victims, or migrant domestic workers being victims. Because for me, where you're being interviewed, you're then subject to the person who is interviewing you. You don't have this leading process of I chose this topic, I'm ready to discuss about the topic I care about. So just to cut with random media requests, we had this possibility to kind of being a part of changing narrative was also women to lead on their own topic, and to not to cut with this image of passive interviewee or passive woman. So we did that in a friendly way and to give space for that. And the last thing, of course, was to kind of have a one-shot podcast discussion, really to have less possibility for selecting the most important information when we do the editing, the post-production. Sometimes it's really complicated to select what was important, what was not. And the woman, I just wanted to have this fluidity for women, that it's a conversation between themselves, and that everything should be kept for the end. So just to give you more idea about the project, finally, it's a 4 episodes project, so they're all available. They're between 25 minutes and 35 minutes. Each podcast, each episode is with between 3 and 5 women each from different nationality, where targeted topics among before migrating, what was their dreams, and the reality once they arrive in Lebanon, which is a topic that we never hear about, the reason why people decide to migrate. Also, we talk about the recruitment agencies in home countries, who are leading this women to migration, the racism, discrimination also in Lebanon on a daily basis, their mental health, and also the coping mechanism that they can have, their relationship also and support within communities, motherhood, or also returning back home if they want to return or not, and their work condition. So the episodes are in French, English, Amharic, and one in special with the Nigerian community. And we had 2 partnership with participants also from this training, Seble from Ethiopia, who is living in Finland, who helped with the Amharic episode, and Teresa from Italy also, who helped with the Nigerian community, who just did the link between migrant domestic worker in Italy and migrant domestic worker in Lebanon. I'm just gonna show you a bit, 2 minutes of a teaser of the podcast to give you the envy of listening to it. So if possible to play.
Femme coupable.
النساء الملامة.
Women of the blame.
Hi everyone, I'm Noel from Kenya. I've been here in Lebanon for 7 years now, and I'm glad to be here.
Hi everyone, my name is Mariam from Sierra Leone. I've been here for 8 years in Lebanon, so I'm very happy to be part of this program.
Hi everyone, my name is Miriam and I'm from the Philippines, and I've been here now for 29 years in Lebanon. I'm a Filipina, and taxi drivers are always taking too much because they think that I'm taking a salary in full dollar, that it's like that I'm a millionaire here in Lebanon. So why they are thinking that I have a lot of dollars?
When you are walking on the road, you will meet like white people. When you are close to them, you'll see them crossing the road. They leave way for you. Or maybe you entered an elevator with them, you'll see them grabbing their bags very tight, thinking that maybe you are a thief, you will take it from them.
There's a place that I went to work. They asked me, are you from this country? Basically what I noticed, like, we get paid according to the origin of your country.
Do you want to go home to your home countries?
If we want to go home, we need to be ready. Mentally, you need to be prepared that I really want to go home.
We have to go back home but I know that it's not easy. We are still here earning for our family.
I don't know how many years it's gonna take, but I have this faith in me, like I need to finish the job that I start before going back home.
To those who have given up there as migrant workers, I just want to let you know that you are not alone in this. Open up, meet people or talk to people.
Now you can clap.
I swear, I'm hot.
Okay, so yeah, this is the small teaser, and if you want to know more, it's all the episodes are available on SoundCloud.
Anna-May, thank you so much. We will be publishing all of the stories in one, and we'll let folks who are on this call know where they can find them. And it was great to see the experience that you brought to this project. Obviously, you have huge competency in the subject matter, but you really also took up the networking, the relationship building part of this project. And we were so inspired and happy to see you connecting with other members of the team and working together on projects that would not be possible outside of this program. So thank you so much for this. And bravo, congratulations.
Thank you.
So we will turn now to our next presenter. So I'm very happy to introduce Giulia Tringali. So Giulia has also been a very enthusiastic and creative participant in our project, and she did it while finishing her master's, which she successfully graduated from this spring. So she has been a very, very busy journalist, and we're grateful for the time and dedication that she showed our program. Giulia is a freelance journalist at Foro Fuco Como and also works at the Manitesi NGO. She is a recent graduate in politics for international cooperation and development, and she's clearly passionate about human rights, migration, and local development. So Giulia, I have to say, when I opened your project, I gasped because it was so beautifully done. And it was such a wonderful mix of photojournalism with storytelling. So I'm eager for the folks who are gathered here today to see more about your work. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Erin. And thanks to you all for the opportunity. It's a pleasure to be here with all this interesting work. And yeah, so I first start with the answering to the famous questions. And well, in general, I can say that I wanted to participate at the Changing the Narrative course because it's been a long time since I'm interested in migration issues, as said, and because also I study international cooperation for development, and I have attended many courses on the topic on one hand, and on the other hand, I've done a lot of volunteering in the field. So it's like I'm keen on it. And so attending the course was really meaningful for me because of my path, but also because of the interest I have in journalism and how to change the narration of migration. Because like in 2016 to 2018 in Italy, it was really tough talking about migration, and it was, I kind of stopped reading the news. I took a step back from journalism because it was kind of too much hearing how the migration was not respectfully narrated. So I prefer to take a step back and take action, so volunteering and all that. But then I discovered this course, and in some way I said, okay, let's try. Let's try. It's my topic. I want to take it, to give a chance again to journalism. And in fact, this was like one of the best experience I had in this field, because I discovered that there are many other ways that we can use to narrate about this phenomenon, and there are people that are trying to do it from a long time. So it was amazing to know all the people, the person we've met, the journalists we've met on information part, but also learning from the tools and the new skills it was really, really useful and was really important to me. So when it was our turn to create our own project, I tried to put everything inside, whatever we have learned. And I started to think about which story is really meaningful for me. As mentioned, my experience at university is recent. And to me, university was really, really important. So I put all together, like refugees, university, and journalism. So what I started to analyze is the phenomena of the University Corridors Initiative, because also talking with some friends and all of that, I discovered that it is really important, this story, and to talk about this story, because it changed the point of view of the migration issue. It changed the point of view in which you can narrate the story of a refugee person. Because in general, also me, I was like in some way, all the time I received like news saying, okay, this refugee came by boat and all and this and this. But then I discovered that there are people coming here for their master degree. They already had a bachelor in the refugee camp and came here, and they have like outstanding marks at university, and it's like another way to tell. So I started to deepen the topic and the project Unicore I've talked about, and the project in short is a University Corridors for Refugees. So they bring Caritas Italiana, UNHCR, Diaconia Valdese, and other partners create like a fund for scholarships that permit to refugee people that has a bachelor in the refugee camp, basically in Africa for the moment, to come here and get the master degree in Italy. And for the moment, this year there will be like 69 people coming, so many scholarships, and each year is more and more, and it's really interesting. So I started this project thinking about writing something, but then it was really interesting also the video and the photographic part. And so in the end, I realized a web doc that I wish to share with you a little bit, and it's here. Okay, yeah, I hope you can see it. So this is like a demo part, and it works like a scroll. So I started at the campus Martinit, where I met Fatih, that is from Somalia, where I met also Bizrat, that is from Eritrea, but then she lived in Ethiopia. So this is Fatih, and maybe they are also connected. And there is also Sabir, that is from Sudan. So I've talked with them thanks to the help of Sister Christina, that is like the local tutor. And then also with Daniele Albanese and Grazia Maniacco, that are like the tutor at national level and the coordinator of the project. So with them, they were really useful contacts. And then I analyzed the story. So I started from their contribution, from the contribution of the 3 students, and I applied in some way the techniques, because it was like I met them and I tell to them, okay, just say what you want to say. I don't ask you questions, just let's chat, let's talk about your experience at university and all that. And all the rest came, like, so I take the parts that were in some way the meaningful parts. And then I've analyzed a part in which Sabir really struck me, because he says that for him, the project and the occasion to arrive, to come to Italy was a kind of elevator. It feels like people elevate other people. So this really touched me, because it means that it's not about development, is not about money and people, that money that you give to people, but it's about to build an elevator together. And this was really, really important for me. And then I've also pointed out all the parts of the projects, like the importance of the introduction to Italian families and all the scholarship that is not only about the university, but also about living in a new country and all that. And finally, pointed out some room for improvement that are concerned, in particular, the economic sustainability of the project. And finally, the dreams of these students, what they're studying, what they are doing it. And it was really, really amazing how they also changed their perspective, talking with me, talking with other students. And it was really, really interesting experience. So this is in general what I've done, and you will find PDF somewhere with Erin will talk about. And thanks for all for the opportunity.
Julia, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing about that. Of course, it's rewarding to hear that it was a positive experience for you and a little bit of a return to some of the things that you valued and that you felt passionate about. And I think one of the things that I appreciated most about your project was that when we first talked about it, it was such a big idea. It was like students, the movement of students. And then we were back and forth working on it. And then when you see the final project, it's so clear that you found the hook. You found the idea, you found the insight that really motivated you. And I think that's wonderful to see that really tough decision-making to say, okay, I'm not going to talk about this. I'm not going to talk about this. And here is the angle. And I know that's really difficult work. And I think you've done a masterful job of it. So thank you, Julia.
Thank you.
So we have one more student presentation. So Rekiatu cannot join us live, but she's kindly prepared a video recording for us to take us through the same three questions. So I will introduce Rekiatu for us, and then I'll ask Falter to play her presentation. So Rekiatu Musajengi has over 8 years experience working as an investigative journalist and human rights advocate. Currently, she works for a state broadcaster where her documentaries and reports address issues concerning refugees and migrants, women's rights, sexual reproductive health, and changing mindsets and development in her country, Cameroon. Rekiatu holds a BSc in journalism and mass communication, and I think this is especially wonderful. She is the CEO of Ruki's Delis, a restaurant that trains girls, women, and refugees on culinary art while exploring the redistribution of food and fresh groceries to help the needy. So we will turn it over to our friend and colleague, Rekiatu.
Hello, everyone. Glad to be here. I'm Rekiatu Musajengi from Cameroon. And it's been an exciting journey so far. I decided to partake in the Changing the Narrative training because I saw it as an opportunity to network with other fellows and exchange knowledge on how we can better report on issues like this, and also to make me get to know what exactly is needed from me as a journalist to report on refugee and migrant issues, because I started reporting around this topic because of passion after my graduation from university, but I've never had concrete training on how to report on this particular issue. And it's been very exciting. I must say I've learned a lot, podcasting especially, how to get good sounds and how to conduct great interviews, and also video and photos, how to take good pictures and videos without victimizing anybody. It's been a wonderful journey so far, and I've learned a lot. I learned that words matter, and we should examine the terminology we use. We should respect the dignity of migrants and avoid using dehumanizing languages. We should ensure balance in our coverage and avoid victimization or oversimplification of issues, and make use of accurate information. We should be balanced in our reporting and connect with migrants refugee groups. If you have activists, connect with them when carrying out reports so that we get the exact information needed. And also we should challenge hate. There's a lot of hate speech, and a lot of people, when reporting, try to victimize migrants. And we've learned that it's very important not to use hate speech and balance our reports, because most of the times journalists are often poorly informed about the complex nature of migration as a phenomenon. It's been an exciting journey, and I have learned that it's important to report ethically and accurate and enable refugee and migrants speak on their behalf, to hear from them and migrants themselves. It's going to better the way we understand the phenomenon. It's been a great journey, and it has impacted me as a person, as a reporter, and also my environment, because whenever there is a session, I tell my colleague, okay, today we have this session online, and this is how it went. This is what I got from this particular expert, that when reporting, we should do this, do that. And they were also glad to learn. And it was exciting because we don't only apply the skills that we've learned in migration reporting, but we equally do that in our day-to-day reports. And I must say it's been a wonderful journey, and I've been able to connect with other fellows from Nigeria, Kenya, and other countries with whom we share the same ideas and how we can better the lives of refugees through our reporting. And my project was something I've been planning to do for a very long time, because where I work, we have over 22,000 refugees, and we had more, but some are in different refugee camps. The Adamawa region of Cameroon is close to about 21,000 refugees now, because others have returned in 2 settlements, that is the Ngam and Bogob. Bogob has 12,000 refugees from Central African Republic, while Ngam has over 7,000. And in these 2 camps, we have women who've been doing exciting things, but their stories are underreported. And I wanted to shed light on some of the activities these women have been doing and make other refugees to know that no matter where they find themselves, they can equally make a change. I traveled to these 2 settlements and interviewed over 7 women. I didn't use all their stories. I used 4. These women, from cattle breeders to midwives to farmers. Others are fashion designers. And there is a lady whose story is very interesting. She makes reusable sanitary pads, but back in her community, she was a student, a master's student, and she now makes reusable sanitary pads. She wants to go back to school. Being a student, being educated didn't stop her from excelling in some of the other activities she has learned in the refugee settlement. There's equally this other lady who back in her community was a journalist, and she was a communicator, an animator in the local language in Sangu from the Central African Republic, but she's in Cameroon now. She's using her skills to communicate, but she's still doing other activities to make ends meet, because these women are from communities where women don't have voices. They are not given the opportunity to talk, to meet the men. And they've come to another country where they have almost the same cultures, but they've been able to get training to learn that when a woman has opportunities, she needs to explore. A woman can go to school, a woman can work, a woman can equally make money. They can't just sit and get help from their husbands all the time. And it's been very encouraging for other women, because they now believe that instead of sitting and waiting for UNHCR or help from international partners to give them food and assistance, they can equally work for themselves. And the Cameroon government has offered them huge piece of land for them to cultivate, for them to do whatever they want to do. They can equally circulate in the country. Some of their stories were very heartbreaking. I had to hold myself to ensure that I don't maybe cry in front of them, because they still have memories of the horrendous journey they had from Cameroon, from Central African Republic to Cameroon. A lady shared an experience where she had to bury her child who was crying. The baby was sick and the baby kept crying on their way to Cameroon, and they were scared that this baby could cause the rebels to attack them. So they decided to kill and bury the baby. Imagine stories like this are really, really heartbreaking. But it has been exciting because I was able to get the stories, capture them, and report the stories the way they should be. And I'm happy these women are changing the narratives in their environment. They form small groups, small associations to encourage other refugee women to come up, to take up space and be able to share their experience with others, for them to be able to work. And I was equally glad to meet men who are encouraging these women. They too have been able to learn because they confess in their country and community where they come from. Women don't usually have opportunity to give money to men or to assist them. What the president of one of the camps I visited said, now he's happy his wife can help to buy cooking oil, salt. At times, even they go to a point of paying fees for their children. He confessed that he wouldn't eat a woman's money, but they've been able to understand, to make them understand that women equally have the opportunity to share. Women can equally work, and the rate of sexual and gender-based violence is reducing, because it was tough from the beginning. When these refugee women wanted to work, it was always an issue. So, and good news for some of the refugees. We have over 300,000 Central African refugees who have started returning home after fleeing the political and sectarian violence since 2014. Most of them are women and children. I am glad most of these women I interviewed are happy, and they say they don't want to go back yet, not anytime soon, because they found home away from home in Cameroon.
Rekiatu, we're so grateful and so honored by your presentation. And I see that you were able to join us live. So I will say hi to you now. I'm happy to see you on the call. I want to say two things about your project and your contribution. First, on a technical perspective, I think it's wonderful that we have a radio documentary. So we can see that it's a distinctive art form and a distinctive creative form and expression of journalism, different than what the podcasts offer. So it's wonderful to have this contrast in the mix of our projects. And then just on a personal note, it's been wonderful to have you in the group because you're such a pro. We received your project proposal and it was perfect. It was all in order. Everything was mapped out. You were ready to go. It was clear that you'd put a ton of thought into this. And we wrote back with, 2 clarifying questions, and you wrote back right away and you're like, yeah, taken care of. I'm going to talk to this person and this person and this person. And you delivered. You really had the foresight to think through the project and deliver exactly what you had dreamed of. So I hope you find it rewarding, because it's rewarding for us to receive it as a contribution to our program. So, yeah. Oh, is that Rekiatu there? Do you want to say hi?
Hello, Erin. Hello, everyone. And thank you very much.
Hi, it's great to see you. I'm so glad you can be here. Thank you for doing the recording and for sending us that presentation. It was wonderful. And we'll move now to some discussion. So maybe there will be some questions that you would like to respond to directly. So I will transition now into responses and a moment for feedback and for further thought on what we've heard. I know we've heard a lot. So let's take a breather, and I will introduce 4 very important people. So my suggestion is that I will briefly introduce each of our 4 keynote respondents briefly, and then you can each take a turn in the order that I introduce you. And what we've tried to do with these responses is to bring together a diversity of perspectives to honor the diversity of the presentations. So we have, of course, different geographic regions and cultures represented, but also different professional competencies. So we will hear from folks working as journalists with specialty in conflict journalism and interviewing, people working in the NGO sector for the churches, looking at global migration. We will hear from one of the regional secretaries, which is incredibly important for this cross-regional project. And then also from someone working directly on migration policy and legislation, which is incredibly significant for how these stories are reflected in the media. So I'm delighted to introduce now Judith and Seth, Lacan and Torsten. So Judith, we know well because Judith was a trainer for us in this program. She is a German journalist who has lived in Goma in the DR Congo for more than 10 years. She trains local journalists in the region and freelances for several German-speaking newspapers, and was a wonderful facilitator and companion for our project. So we're delighted to have her back for this last conclusion. Then I'm happy to meet and to introduce Reverend Dr. Sephiroza Carroll, Program Executive for Mission and Mission from the Margins. Seph is a Fiji-born Rotuman who spent her formative years growing up in Lautoka, the western side of Viti Levu in Fiji. These experiences continue to inform her theological reflections, and she works on cross-cultural relationships, gender, culture, and climate from a diasporic perspective of a migrant who calls Australia one of her homes, and she is ordained in the Uniting Church and trained in Sydney, Australia. Thank you, Seth, for joining us today. I'm also very pleased to welcome Lacan Otufo-Dunrin, a journalist and media career development specialist based in Lagos. He is the secretary of the Africa region of WACC and has over 35 years experience working in the media, during which I have served as the Sunday editor, managing editor, online and group news editor, and he also teaches at the Nigeria Institute of Journalism. And then last but not least, we welcome Dr. Torsten Moritz, who is the General Secretary of the Church's Commission for Migrants in Europe. He has been a collaborator on past iterations of these projects, and so we're delighted to welcome him back for this celebratory event. He was involved in European ecumenical youth movements and has served the Church's Commission for Migrants in Europe for more than 20 years, including as executive secretary before moving into the leadership role nearly 4 years ago. So thank you and welcome. And Judith, we will turn it over to you first.
So, can you hear me? Hello?
Hello, I can hear you. Lekon here, I can hear you.
Yeah, works good.
Okay. Okay, great. Yes, hello, everybody, and thank you very much for the invitation so that I can be part of this meeting today. And thank you also that I had a chance to look over 3 projects of the 3 journalists who presented their work already. So my task today is just to give a little bit feedback of what I thought about it. And yes, so first of all, I really want to say I was really impressed of all the 3 projects I had to review. And you did really a good job. So I think you can be really proud of you. And as Erin told me also, you did not have like a very big budget, and also the restrictions of traveling because of Corona and so on. And if I have this also in mind, then I have to say, wow. So I'm really impressed. So yeah, then I start maybe with the first one was Aname. Yeah, and I listened to all, like to the teaser and episode 1, 2, and 3. What's always good with a podcast, that you give much time to the people concerned to speak. That's a really good idea, and I like this very much. And I also thought like the topics you were focusing on was also very interesting. So I have a few things which I thought maybe this could have been intensified. I have to say, I also had in mind when I was reviewing the projects, I also thought, okay, we today who speak today together, I think we have already like a similar vision of how journalism should be and how to report on migrants and so on. But I think it should be our aim also to convince others, like the traditional media makers, that they would also like a little bit change their mind. And I can tell you, I think I know I'm talking about, because I'm working for like, big newspapers in Germany and Switzerland and Austria, and I always have a fight with them, because when they read my text and then they change words around and so, or use words which I do not like, or they make titles on articles which I do not like and which I would have never had made. So I think it's a good idea if we also try to convince others. And I had this in mind when I was listening to your projects also. And so now for the podcasts, I was thinking maybe it would have been easier to understand for people who are not experts in the topic, what's it all about working as a woman coming from another culture in Lebanon, if there would have been a little bit more context in the podcast also, and a little bit more, I would say, a moderator function. I know the idea was, hey, people should talk on their own and speak for their own, which is a good idea. But sometimes, because there was just one voice after the other, and people were just talking, then as a listener, you forgot about who is who now, and the voice belongs to which woman now. And this was sometimes a little bit confusing. So I had really to think about, hold on a second, who was she now? And if there would be more of a moderation in between, not like so you give the word now to her and say, so I ask you now this and this because I want to know. We can also moderate in a way that we give the word and respect the ideas the other one has, but a little bit more moderation, and also giving a little bit more context while moderating. I would have liked this. For example, if you know, if you talk about the two ways like women work in Lebanon, with or without contract. So I was asking myself, why is this the case? And why would a family accept having a woman working for her without a contract? I guess it's cheaper then, because maybe you can skip some I don't know, insurance or whatsoever, I have no clue. But things like that, I would have liked to be more explained, and always with the view, if somebody else who would listen to it and who is not yet like interested in migration would have understood easily. So that this is what I was thinking about. Well, yes, and then maybe you can answer this to me later, Anami. I was thinking about the title, Women of the Blame. So I thought when I first read that, oops, that sounds for me a little bit negative, and but you wanted to show how strong they are. And then I thought, maybe I would have just added like strong women of the plane or something like that. But only with that I thought, oh, this is like, is it a victimizing again? But I when I listened then to the podcast, I did understand, no, it was not victimizing, but only the title, I was a little bit surprised. And what would have also been nice, I think, to give more concrete examples where a woman had a problem and how she figured it out. Because now they were all talking about like racism or how difficult it is. And they all said, but we are strong and we support ourselves, or we find a way. But I was thinking, the one or the other example, like of a real case where a woman would say, okay, this and this and this happened to me, and I figured it out like this, this and this, like really more concrete examples. So this I would have appreciated. So this was now the podcast. Yes, then the second was Julia. Thank you all. By the way, I learned a lot from all of you. So the information were really, really interesting. And I did not know for also this project of the university. So very interesting. And I think what I really liked is that you managed like to give
I think your internet has cut out. Has it cut out for other folks? So how about we'll move to Seth, and then if Judith comes back at the end, then we'll allow her to finish up. So Seth, if you're ready, we'll turn the spotlight to you just for very few remarks, and then we would like to have time for some discussion with the group.
Okay, great. Thank you, and thank you for the invitation to comment and to be part of this process and be part of the graduation. Just 3 points I want to make. The first is I want to say thank you and congratulations to the 3 of you, and for the fabulous work that you've done. I come from the Pacific, from a culture where storytelling is very important and very integral. But it's not just telling stories, because the stories that we tell actually lead us to deeper perspectives and to a deeper truth. And that's what I think all your 3 projects have done. You've amplified the voices of those that we deem to be on the margins, and and you've done that in an incredible way. You've also lifted their dignity, which is, what I really appreciated. And you've allowed a space and a platform to enable it to be their own voices. So it's, it's amplifying, it's also allowing them to speak for themselves. So this leads me to the second point. In my area of work, 2 things are very important. One is agency, and the other is representation. My area is mission from the margins. So, the theological principles around that is God's incarnational solidarity with those who are marginalized. And the second, equally important, but we forget, is the agency of the margins. And again, I think your 3 projects in different ways have highlighted the agency of those that we don't give voice to. I like the way that gender has been lifted, because when we talk about migration, we can often forget the gendered nature of migration, and that women and children are usually feel the process of migration, whatever that migration may be, differently from, say, their male counterparts. So, I guess in your projects, I see room for expansion, not only just for women and children, but also for the other aspects that we sometimes leave out, LGBTIQ, for instance. So, so that was what I really appreciated. The third point I wanted to make, and this is really just a question for me because I keep mulling about it, is the terminology. It's not that, any of you used it in a way that I wasn't comfortable with, but the term migrant, people migrate for different reasons. There are different kinds of migrations. I think the stats at the moment is that from the IOM is that there are 281 million people. 84 million people are in that status of refugees, which includes displacements, et cetera, et cetera. So if you're looking at the stats in general, it suggests that voluntary migration is happening across borders than the forced displacement. But yet we epitomize the faces of those who are displaced as the kind of, image of migrants. And so my question is around, is migrants really a good term? I know that there's been debate in the media, in policy about what we should call them. I don't think we should call them anything, but really, does that terminology work? Does it work for policy making? I don't know, but it's just I just have this discomfort with the word, and I'm not quite sure how best we move on from that. And I guess the second question is, what next? So this is the thing with Talanoa in the Pacific. So we tell the story, we highlight, we amplify, we give agency. But what happens after the story? That brings about that change. So, so those are just two questions that I want to leave you with. That's from me. Did I do it within 5?
I wasn't looking.
Hello, I'm back.
Judith,
I don't know
okay.
if you can hear me, but I would be back now.
Okay, super. So we just heard from Seth a wonderful intervention. Judith, if you could just take really one more minute just for a few general remarks, because we do want to move to Lacan and Torsten as well, and then time for discussion. So please, just a few words.
Okay, well, yes, thank you. Sorry for the interruption. Okay, as I said already, all in all, I found the projects wonderful. What I could say in general is I would have liked more details on the persons, like also how were their personal feelings. For example, the women in Cameroon, like coming from Central Africa, it must have been an enormous change for them. I mean, not being allowed to work, and suddenly you work with their feelings, and how did they feel, and how would they overcome like this maybe cultural obstacles. So I think if there would have been more details on feelings and daily life, and which would show the person even more as an individual person, and how this person really dealt with concrete problems, I think this would have been like make it more easily to understand, and also to appreciate even more what these women did. So this is what I could say in general. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Judith. And we will take now a turn to listen to Lacan, who's joining us from Nigeria, and then Torsten will wrap it all up for us. So Lacan, over to you. It's wonderful. Thank you so much to have a representative from the Africa region of WACC. So it's great to have you.
So thank you for having me. I hope you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So once again, thank you for having me on this panel. I want to align with some of the observations that are made by my co-analysts. I agree that this is a wonderful project, and I share the concerns that this is providing a better narrative Because one of the things that stood out in all the three things is that these people were able to exercise their communication rights, which align with what WACC stands for. At whatever level you are, whether you are migrating, whether you are displaced, you must have your rights to speak up. And I think that is what is evidenced in the podcast especially, where these women who ordinarily would not have been given voices in the traditional media are able to speak up. So I think that is very, very important. I like the idea that the journalists actually, especially the Cameroonian lady, went to this camp. One of the criticisms of media coverage is that sometimes it's very episodic. We wait for government officials to go to this camp before we go, but she went on herself. So she was able to capture some of those nuances, some of those voices that would have been missing in traditional reporting. I find the Italian story very, very engaging because it's something that I can relate with. In Nigeria, we have quite a number of women who migrate, and here's an opportunity for people to hear from those who have experienced it. So that is very, very important. Again, I'm very intrigued about the communications rights opportunity for these people. For the university story, I think it's also very good, especially because it's what you call a solution journalism approach. That presentation would be good for a solution journalism approach, where you have a problem, a solution has been provided, and even the limitations are highlighted. So that's something that people can learn from, and also emphasize that the fact that you are a migrant or you are displaced does not mean that you don't have opportunity to learn. So some of these people are unfortunate that they find themselves in this instance. So on the whole, I think this is very, very good work that you have all done. My suggestion is that I look through some of the podcasts, for example, I imagine that they may have limited reach. So I will advocate for some multimedia collaboration. So for example, the university story will be good copy for a print journalist, so we can collaborate or find a way to reproduce that report in a website of a platform that could give it wider reach. Even for the podcast, the quotes are very, very important. So it's possible to transcribe that presentation and put them on a website where they can be found, or a newspaper publication. And I also think that I'm not a broadcast person, but I know that sometimes broadcasts can be shorter. So while you had a lot of space, and it will take a lot of patience to listen to all this story, they can be shorter if you try to reduce and maybe get the voices. So again, I would say that this is a well-done job, and we should find a way to keep it up and share the success story. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lacan. And certainly we will be in touch about sharing all of the projects, including one on solutions journalism throughout the Africa WACC region. So Torsten, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, and greetings to all of you. I'm very pleased to be on this panel, given some reflections. I mean, the projects are wonderful, and I can only say congratulations on your graduation. It's fully deserved. I'm happy to be with the co-commentators here, not least Judith, whose article in the Süddeutsche I always particularly enjoy. CCME is, among other things, trying to influence European policy, and my perspective is coming from that. What does it have to do with influencing policy and changing narratives, changing policy? And we very often get to the situation where we, in advocating, in lobbying, get to politicians, decision makers who tell us, we agree with you on the value basis, but what will the public say? What do the voters think? And I think that's where this project is very, very essential, and all in its different forms. And I would very much echo what Seth said. It's important in terms of agency, it's important in terms of visibility, and I'd like to add a last point, normality. And I'll come to that in a moment. The changing narratives has absolutely something to do with the slogan, which is very prevailing in lots of the work we and others do: nothing about us without us. So you should not be talking about them, the refugees, the migrants, but the voice of refugees and migrants is always essential. We're not talking about waves, we're not talking about floods, we're not talking about numbers, we're talking about people who have an opinion, who have a story. So I think all projects in a different degree came in with that, and that's what I really loved about them. But also, let's be part of the discussion. I think what I particularly found in Julia's, and that's European reality, so I can probably most relate to it, is to say, look at all the people who are supporting. Because we very often get the media look, the media hate refugees, people hate refugees. No, I don't believe that. I think if we go out there, if we talk to people, it's a very different picture, but we very often don't tell the stories of which are positive, because of course the attention is more on scandal, on drama. I think there's an enormous potential in taking out the drama in some of it. Yes, of course, if people are dying on the beach, that is a drama, but there's lots of other things happening with people being strong, refugees having potential, making a contribution, people welcoming them. So a lot of the unspectacular, spectacular stories of migration going well. And I think that is something we need to tell in a debate where everybody wants to tell us migration per se is drama, and if people come from other countries or other regions, there'll be a clash. I think that is very, very important. And for me, at the end of the day, we will only overcome prejudice if people are able to meet. You can give them statistics or everything, you need the encounter, but I think all the contributions here stimulate an appetite to get to know the others. And I think in that sense, it's also very important for me. Some of my reflections, a couple of things I was struggling with. We know when we talk to politicians, often have 3-4 minutes. How do we bridge that? Of course, we want to have all the nuances, we want to have the details, but is there any way we can, so to say, TikTok the results of this project, that somebody can really 2-3 minutes look at it and something at least starts to change? And very practically, I'd be very, very happy to have some of the materials. We need pictures, we need stories, we need all of that. So I'll definitely be using some of it. But my question is, how do we get it to the people who might not necessarily be listening to us 24/7? Is there anything where we can make the material, which is extremely beautiful, useful, available and accessible to people who might have different ways of communicating in different time frames in which they communicate? But overall, extremely useful, very, very helpful. Well done.
Thank you, Torsten. And thank you to each of our 4 respondents for your careful reading of the projects and for bringing your lifetime of experience to the table in such a brief moment. We have probably full heads and my notepad is full. So I imagine our interpreters also need a moment to breathe. So let's take a break. So we are going to move now into just a short break of 3 to 5 minutes to reset, to think about what questions you have, especially for the students and about their projects. So please take a moment to signal in the chat if you have a question, a response for any of the panelists in particular. And then when we come back, the moderation of this next part of our time together will be by Sarah Spiker, who is the Deputy General Secretary of WACC Global. So I'm grateful for her to guide us through this, and I will see you shortly.
I think we're coming back from a break. It's always good to have a break, especially after such really rich sharing, presentation of really profound stories and examples of excellent journalistic coverage, and then good comments from our key commentators. So this is a time for all of us to discuss together, not just the stories themselves, but the way we tell stories, the way journalism reports on migration and asylum issues, and what more we can do. So it's not only a time that people can ask questions of our journalists, but also our commentators, but also us as a group. So please feel free. Several of you have been putting questions into the Q&A, which is great. We'll come back to those. And you can keep doing that. And you could also, if you put in the Q&A, if you want to say something, that would be a great, we can call on you and perhaps let you talk about and share your perspective directly. But I'm going to first turn it back to our spotlighted journalists here, Anna-May, Julia, and Rekiatu. You've heard now, you've presented your stories, you've seen the others, how they have prepared their stories, and you've listened to the commentary. There have been a few questions, and I think Julia in particular has answered the questions in the chat that talk about how do we reach who, how did we think about our audience? How do we reach our audience in the best way? So my first invitation is just to go for the three of you individually, if you could react to some of the commentary that you received, and then those questions about audience and reach. Anna-May, do you mind if I start with you first, please?
No, thank you, Sarah. I think there's a lot to say, but I think I would say for me, when I had this project in mind, the first audience was really migrant domestic workers themselves and communities. I don't say that other on social media and other audience and the public audience is not important, but we really noticed by having this topic that there's a lot of taboo and topic that women don't have within their communities. So it was the main goal. And the second thing, if I can add, was also to reach out to migrant domestic workers in their home countries, because the whole process and what's happening in Lebanon and the sponsorship system is basically you have more and more women who are getting into lies from society, from recruitment agencies, from their families, saying that they can go to Lebanon, migrate to Lebanon and make a lot of money. So there is really this part of doing awareness process, also awareness to migrant domestic workers in their home countries, and to understand that you have this possibility to migrate, but it's also what's happening there, and this is what you need to know. And I think that was also the goal of women when they participate in this project. They really wanted to reach out to their communities first. And I think sometimes changing the narrative is also about that. It's of course targeting media mainstream, of course targeting this, if I can say, right-wing discourse on media and on migration and this narrative on migration. But I think also maybe to make people aware and migrant domestic workers talking about Lebanon themselves, and to understand, okay, what will we expect there. And for me, that was the most important thing.
Thanks, Anna-May. Julia, what's your reaction to the commentary and the questions?
Thank you, firstly, and I agree also with Anna-May because one of my objective was on one side to arrive at migrant audience, but first of all, I think that my main audience was the education system world. So like to arrive firstly at Italian students that can understand that maybe their colleagues, they have a refugee background, and they maybe there is like a also a possibility to create a community around knowing their stories and all that, and not just passing by. And moreover, I think that addressing to the educational systems and academic world and students, maybe also with the Students Association, these stories can be in some way brought to like the academic chief and trying to understand that maybe they can create other scholarship that can open new positions. So also other university listening to the story, maybe they can think, okay, other are doing the same, let's try to do this. And maybe new opportunities that will be created. So this is one of my own objectives. And this is on one end. On the other end is also to be like a sort of example story of success, as say like a sort of solution journalism that can be brought also in the country of origin of these students, that can be an example for others that maybe will start to know about Unicor project, these scholarships, and they maybe will start to think, okay, let's study hard, I can do this. So yeah, a sort of two audiences in this way.
Excellent, Julia, thank you. Rekiatu, your responses to the commentary and the questions.
Okay, my audience, I had three. First, the migrants themselves, the female migrants. And secondly, international organizations, that is UNHCR and partners like IOM, International Labour Organization, World Food Program, and the host community. Because most of these migrants, when they come, some of them have formal education, and when they come to host communities, they have little or no formal work. You find them in informal sector like hairdressing, they are barbers, they work in farms. So the goal is for policymakers to look at policies that can favor migrants so they don't lose all what they've acquired for the number of years, either as medical doctors, as journalists. So host communities, for example, we have very little or no refugees who actually work here in some certain sectors. You will mostly find them as domestic workers. So one of them, that is the Cameroon government, is supposed to be my audience. So when they listen to these women, they know that, okay, they equally have potentials and they can equally be recruited. And for the international organizations like UNHCR, World Food Program, and other partners, they should see that apart from providing food and other basic necessities for refugees, they can engage them in other activities, informal activities, like maybe some of them can be lecturers in universities, they can be teachers, and ensure that their pay package is the same. I met a few who are teachers in nursery schools, but what they pay them is half of what they pay citizens of the country. So if we have policies that can, I know they exist, but they are not very, they are not applied, it's not applicable. And also for the refugee women themselves, not to give up. Some have given up already. I have an advanced level or I have a degree and I cannot do anything with it because I know no matter what I do, I won't be recruited, or I can't have scholarships like others, or like children or people or students from the particular community where I reside in a country. So I just had to make them to know that there is always a way if they are, sorry for the noise in the background, if they understand themselves and they can also learn. And one day, maybe there'll be a good Samaritan, or these policies might change and they can equally get into the formal sector like any other human being.
So important. And I think all of these examples are showing how we can break down and expand those, break down the stereotypes and expand our understanding. I think it was Seth who was saying these stories help us to reach a deeper understanding and deeper truth, in fact. And I think part of the question then is, what do we do with this deeper truth? And how do we get this this story more widely? And let's come back to that. I see that Vianney has put several things in the chat and also has her hand up. So I'd like to give her an opportunity to ask her a question or make her comment. Vianney.
Okay.
Yes, Vianney?
Yes. Good morning, everyone. I don't know if you are listening to me, but
yeah, that's fine.
Okay. I'm migrant domestic worker in Lebanon, and I didn't take part of the podcast of Aname, but I hear the comment and I hear also the podcast. What I want to give a little bit, not as an answer, but as a contribution as migrant, because the topic is concerning us, is so when we do this podcast, it's usually for us because to be migrant somewhere is not easier. even to have someone that will just listen to you, even if it's just to say something. There is no one to listen to you. That means when someone comes to us as Aname or as that my sister from Cameroon, because I'm from Cameroon also, to listen to you, you feel something more than the happiness. That's why we usually just share what makes us feel happy. We don't feel so happy to share what sadness, because I hear also I forget the name, sorry, asking like, what did you not share the feeling of the girl? It's good to know, to wanted to know about the feeling. And I want to ask also, why journalists, they want usually to have the feeling and want so much to have the explication. It's really so difficult to us as migrants with all what we are facing. We decide to leave the house, to hear the girl prefer to burn the baby to travel. And then to talk about it also is more than broken. And you need to listen it every time when you listen to the podcast. The target people is us migrants and is those people in our country, to make them know that we still alive. Don't be pitching for us. We are managing to be alive, and people who help us also is to them also to hear in what we are sharing, to know specific thing that we need, because we don't so much need just to bring food. We need knowledge to be having food every time. In the podcast, we just wanted to people who are listening to find the good thing inside and use it also to themselves, and also to feel like we are also human beings as everyone all over the world. That's what I wanted to say as a little answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Vianney. That's really powerful, and showing how the importance of giving that space, and to understand that space for the real experiences and what you want to share as a migrant, as someone who is in a different place, and that the hope that you could give to others through these stories. And I think that's so important. You know, Seth had given a challenge that I hadn't heard before about questioning the whole term of migrants. I've heard of questioning the terms of refugees. I've heard of questioning the way we talk about, for instance, illegal migrants. And I know when we did also the media monitoring back in November of 2017, we did with CCME and WACC Europe, we did a media monitoring of 7 European countries. And I looked up the monitoring statistics of how were the people on the move described. What were their occupations described in these stories? And 43%, it was not even stated. 27% was just identified as a migrant, a refugee, or an asylum seeker. And then the rest were, you know, were they an academic expert? 3%. Were they a student? 3%. Were they an activist or a worker? 3%. I mean, it's so the whole narrative that we find in the media is just a label. So I'm opening this up not just to our journalists, but to our commentators and to others who would like to come in here. How can we overcome that label? We could tell stories, but how can we really overcome that label in our major media too? Can anybody say that? Torsten, is it? I just saw you move, so.
Yeah, I can have a first go. And of course, an organization which has migrants in its title, it's something we reflect upon quite regularly. Both the terms refugee and migrants, due to the fact that they have some notion in international instruments, refugee convention with the migrants is less defined, I think are still something we can't do away with. But I think we should in our work explain the complexity of it. One of the things I'm always saying, I'm a German, I live in Brussels, I'm a luxury migrant. I have moved from one country to the other. I profit from the most generous migration regime this world has. And it could be an example for other ways of organizing migration. But just, I think we can't do away with the term, but we need to unfold all the realities which are behind there. And that's indeed people who are being forced, like Seth said, but lots of others, even though we may argue how voluntary this really is. So to say there's all kinds of reasons. People fall in love and they move. They find the country nice. That's the nice things. And then there's all kinds of people being pressured to move to another country, to gain money, to save their lives. So I think instead of trying to do away with it, we should rather explain a bit more. We've in the ecumenical movement, there was a while ago the global ecumenical network on uprooted people. But to be very honest, nobody understood what was meant. And also, if we talk about people on the move, that's another attempt to do it. But then people think of tourists. So I think we are in a reality where we can't do away with these two concepts without completely losing. But then there's, of course, specifications like the clandestine, the illegals, and that is something to say, no, I mean, no one is illegal. Need to challenge that. And also with refugees and migrants, how long are you a migrant? If you've been in the country for 10 years, are you still a migrant? I tend to say at a certain point that there's people with, like we have a treasurer on our board who's a Brit with a Nigerian background. But for me, he's clearly a Brit because he's been in the country for a very long time. So I think we can nuance this term, but I wouldn't do away with it completely, fully knowing that it can be problematic if we just stick to that one term.
Thank you. And Aaron, you wrote something into the chat related to terminology. Do you want to just share a little bit on that?
Well, basically, it was the question that Torsten just answered. You know, I think the question that Seth asked about terminology was like provocative in a good way, because what I see is that there is some reconciling to do between, for example, international humanitarian law, legal instruments, policy language, and then how this is translated into journalism. So do we want to keep like everything symmetrical and have congruence between the terminology, or do we want to resist through journalism and then undertake this process of clarification, saying, well, migrant according to the UN is different from migrant according to what I'm doing in my journalism. So basically, I think Torsten started to respond to that, and I think it's a very compelling thing to think about.
Yeah, and it also talks about how do we make an impact with the stories, and how do we make a real impact into the mainstream media? Judith had mentioned that as well in her presentation. You know, how do we have powerful stories? How do we get this to affect the media that's reaching the most people? And I would like to turn to Judith now, because there are two issues. One is I know you wanted to come back to what Vianney was saying in terms of sharing feelings. And I think that's also part of our storytelling. But then you also mentioned in your topic trying to argue with, you know, the editors of mainstream German media on who want to change your words. What can we do when there's this editorial level that changes the stories that we want to present? Judith?
Yes. I start maybe first with, should we talk about feelings, or should journalists ask about feelings of people who are, I would say, leaving home to avoid refugee or migrant or whatsoever. I did not want to say that we should do it in a sensational way. So how did you feel when you saw, for example, this woman where the uncle was slaughtered? And so I do not talk about this. I mean other things, and I experience it here in Congo. For example, I work a lot with community radio journalists. And especially young female journalists have a hard time, and sometimes the husband or the brother or the father would not like that she works and so on, but then she keeps on working. They are very strong, but they have inner fights. These people have inner fights. And when I start talking with them about it, first of all, they feel relieved because there is a person they can talk about their feelings. And then they, as soon as they are ready to share, then we have like really good discussions, and then another colleague, like woman colleague, would say, hey, I disobey my, because this is, they feel it's right that they keep on working, they like their job, but still, as they are brought up with certain values, they feel guilty very often. And when they start talking about it, yeah, it helps them, and it gives them good example to others, and it makes others also. I thought maybe we should also talk about feelings, because, for example, if a woman in Lebanon is talking about her feelings and how she dealt with it, and how she got even stronger, this can even encourage other women also. So it was in this sense. I did not want to say like, let's yeah, how was your fear while fleeing, or so, not these kinds of things. So just to clarify it. Yeah, now the bigger question is, how do we get into so-called mainstream media? Well, the good thing is they start thinking. So some years ago, they were not even aware that there is a problem. I think, so from my experience, we have one problem in the big newspapers. I'm talking now about Germany. People who are in charge, who are the leaders of, let's say, politics departments, these are very often people who were like, had a classical correspondent career. Very often it's the former US correspondents who become the chiefs in newspapers of politics department. And they are so focused on US and relations between US and Europe that the rest of the world is like, yeah, there's a rest of the world, that's true, but it's not really interesting. And so now it begins to change, because I mean, they see now, I mean, Ukraine, the war, and China, and like the different values we have now in the world. Suddenly now they realize, oh, maybe we should have a look on other parts of the world. And so that's the good thing, that they start thinking. And I think what we should do is, I do now a personal statement. I mean, I was very long, so I was always fighting also with myself. Journalism. I am fed up when I ever bring a story from Africa where it's about war or whatsoever. Yeah, write it. Whenever I bring another story about, let's say, a good initiative, or how they deal with plastic, yeah, which instead of just throwing it in the lake, they produce like furniture or whatsoever. Then they say, yeah, you know, there's not so much space in the newspaper today, and then I have a hard time to sell it. And I was really like fed up, and I thought, no, this is not the way. I do not want to be forced to do all those stories, which is, I mean, it's true, there is this side of Africa, but there is also another side. I'm also against it that we only write how beautiful Africa is, and so many young people, and they are all they will all buy our products and business opportunities, and I don't know what. So I think we have to be honest and show both sides. And as I was frustrated, I thought, no, I give it up. I give up the journalism. But then I had so many friends and so many people and said, no, don't do it. Because, I mean, you are one of the few ones. There's also other ones. I'm not a hero. There's lots of other ones, but also not so often read and heard. And they said, if you give it up, then it's even worse. And then I decided, okay, I fight on. So what I do is now I explain. So I have my contacts and I explain before I do a story, what's it about, and why I want to do it, and why it is important also for Europe. And I realized if you talk to a person and you have a discussion, there's many who understand and get more and more open to accept those stories. And also there is now a movement because, I mean, Europeans, I mean, many people look first on their own, but I think Europeans are really the masters in just being very European-centered. And now they realize, oh, we have a problem in journalism because we do only have like kids of academics who won't become journalists. And maybe this is a problem seeing what's going on in society, and we do not even understand what's, let's say, blue collar people think or so. So they realize, oh, we have to have a certain diversity, and they start now to be more open. And there's also an organization, do you know, it's called in German Neue
So Judith, we're going to have to, we're going to have to close this one more comment, and then we have to move on. Sorry.
Okay, there is organizations, for example, Neue Deutsche MedienmacherInnen, they call themselves, and they fight for more diversity in editors' rooms. I'm also a member of it, and they really go to the people there. They explain, they have like diversity guides, they explain to people what to do, how to be more open. And I think, maybe we should cooperate more with those people. And also if you have, or one of the journalists, you have a story, maybe we could also contact like this organization. I can send the link to Erin after. Maybe they have good connections to so-called mainstream media. Maybe we could find a way how to publish a story somewhere or so. But there is a movement, it's starting,
And that's exciting. And I think that we have, in fact, we have involved the group in Germany that's been working on diversity in the newsroom. And we're very open. I mean, that would have been my next question, but I know we're running close to our time. The next question was, how do we really make a difference? How do we spread the news? And Lakon had an excellent practical suggestion within his talk about working on cross-platform ways that we can break up the stories and make them more visible in different ways. Anna-May, you have your hand up, so I would like to give you the opportunity, maybe for a last comment, and then I'm going to turn back to Erin.
I think it's not me. It's someone who, because I don't know, someone who used the link that I sent. So it's another Anna-May, probably.
It's another Anna-May.
I don't know if the person wants to say something.
No, don't know the person. But, well, that's fine. I mean, that's maybe they could write in the chat or the question, or what their
all right. I just wanted to I take the time just to say quickly to answer to Judith, the woman of the blame. I know it's a double sense, and that's why I wanted to play with that, and apparently it worked with you, because you were wondering why it's woman of the blame, and then you listen to the podcast and you're like, actually it's about women being strong and sharing their experiences. And this is absolutely what I wanted to bring in it, which was to say that most of the time women are they're getting the blame of everything, of the migration, of what's happening, I would say, in the domestic work and domestic in general, what they have to do in society. We always put the blame on women, and especially when we talk about migration. So I really wanted to have this word, and in French it's also the same kind of femme coupable, is also to have this, be close to this fact where people think that they're guilty, and guilty of what actually, and to give voices to that. And I think playing in both sides also can bring different stuff. So I wanted to bring the curiosity, and apparently it worked with Judith.
Thank you, Anna-May. And thank you all who participated. And I think we'll now move to recognizing not only the stories, the journalists that have been spotlighted today, but all of the participants in our project who were able to complete and submit projects. So you've only seen a snapshot of really wonderful stories. So I'm going to turn it over to Erin to finish our graduation. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, everyone. We will go just slightly over time, but I promise you it will be worth it. This is really the moment that we've been looking forward to for many, many months. And, you know, you can imagine as a project coordinator, I get really lost in the details, you know, the font size on PowerPoint slides. And this week when the projects were coming in, it brought me right back up to the big picture level of why we were doing this. And it has just been totally amazing to see what the students have come up with, how different all of the projects are. And I want to thank each of them again. And I'm sorry that we couldn't meet in person. And I hope that we will all live long and healthy enough lives that our paths will cross. And I know that you will always be welcome as part of the WACC family, and that we look forward to following your work and looking forward to other opportunities to work together as we continue to change the narrative about migrants and refugees. So now we will have a celebration, a graduation, and then I will turn it over to one more person to say a final word. So Walter, could you play the video for us, please?
Your life is a journey, and this is all we go through just for the sake of a better life. Because it's too sad, nobody wants to talk about it.
We were afraid to sleep in our homes at night. We did all the work during the day, and by 3 p.m., we went into the bush to sleep.
ሰላም ጤና ይስጥልኝ የተከበራችሁ ውድ አድማጮቻችን፣ በዛሬው ፕሮግራማችን በሊባኖስ ቤይሩት በቤት ሰራተኝነት የስራ መስክ ተሰማርተው በሚገኙ
The approach seems not that much proper to me. And this is mostly because we don't see this story through the lens of the victims.
There were so many lives lost. On ours, there were 45 people that lost their life. Then I came to Italy. Finally, the promised land. So I was so happy finally. So every suffering I faced is over.
Wave, massive arrival, flow, displacement. These are the terms used when media covers refugees and migrants. But emotions, experiences, and struggles represent their diversity of experience and make up a part of the unusual and rewarding narratives of their journeys.
Hello, I'm Amina Deka Asma, and in this episode, we speak to Angelique Kanjirembo, a refugee, traditional healer, and multilingual businesswoman originally from Burundi.
Even though I was only 4 years old, I could see the pain and the trauma that my parents were experiencing, as well as the fear.
Today, our guests, migrant domestic workers in Lebanon, will share their stories, their struggles to overcome migration difficulties. And as opposed to the image of victims, they show their courage, their strength, and their pride.
We're all so proud. Congratulations, everyone. It's been an honor. A last word from Stephen Brown, who is the president of the Europe Regional Association of WACC. And while Stephen is talking, I will put up a slide with how we can keep in touch, including my email address and how to get involved with WACC on social media and web. So look for all the final projects and don't hesitate to reach out.
Well, that's just been absolutely amazing and amazing to us. Thank you, all of you. My name, as Erin said, is Stephen Brown. I'm president of WACC Europe and also treasurer and a member of the board of WACC Global. And I just want to add a few words at the end. I want really first to thank our participating journalists. It was just great to see what you've achieved. Thank you for your commitment, your skills, your openness, your eagerness to learn, but also your eagerness to share through your communication. I think we've felt in the past couple of hours how you've inspired us, and we hope that the stories and efforts that's been presented today will inspire others to take a communication rights approach to their reporting. Congratulations on your perseverance to reach this graduation, and we look forward to working with you in promoting your stories even further. Thanks also to our 4 respondents for your insights, responses, but also your questions, which we take with us and reflect on as we continue this work together. To our project coordinator, Erin Green, without your organisation, creativity, extensive expertise, this project would not have been achieved and certainly not have been as successful as it has been. So I think I can say on behalf of the steering committee that it was apparent from the very beginning when you started working on this project that we realized what could happen with it. So really our very deep thanks to you, Erin, and our thanks as well to WACC's Deputy General Secretary, Sarah Speicher. Without you, the project would not have been possible, I don't think. And to thank all of those in the leaderships of WACC's regions in Africa, Europe, and the Middle East who made this possible. Thanks are also due to the Otto Permili Fund of the Waldensian Church of Italy, which provided a substantial part of the fund that made this project possible. And I'd like to thank all of you, all of us, who've participated and attended this online event, because you obviously care about how refugees and migrants, and we can discuss the terminology, are represented in our media, how voices are heard and stories are told. And I hope you also share what our journalists have done and stay connected with WACC as we continue to research, equip and advocate for all people's right to communicate. Finally, I would like to thank the World Council of Churches for hosting this webinar and organising the interpretation. Thank the interpreters who play a really important role in helping us to understand each other, often not seen and behind the scenes. And to Walter Munitz, who's been providing the technical support behind the scenes, without whom we wouldn't have been webinaring today. So, on behalf of WACC's regional associations in Africa, Europe, and the Middle East, as well as WACC Global, thank you for joining us on this journey, and we hope you can continue to walk with us as we work for communication for all. Thanks all, and best wishes, and congratulations.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.